Now we're going to transition and take that one level deeper into a more intimate way. I'm actually excited to talk about this session a little bit because it's very different from anything we've done in the past with this keynote slot. So we developed this next session, which we've called the Leadership Stories, based on feedback from many of you who've been attending the conference for the past couple of years, that you've really valued hearing from leaders in a very intimate way about their own personal stories or failures and learning more about what really drives them. So we're proud to introduce you 4 very exceptional leaders today who really embody this year's theme. I'm going to kick it off by turning this over to Cort Worthington, who teaches leadership here at Haas.
Hi there, folks. I met the 4 speakers and read their bios, and it's an honor to be moderating a very diverse set of leadership paths that these folks have taken. You know, it's easy to sort of look at a snapshot of any of the 4 speakers once they're talking to you and think, gosh, they're a full adult. They've perhaps always been this way in terms of their success and where they are in their career. And of course, it's just a journey. And everybody starts out at 5. My daughter here is at 8 years old, is I think the youngest attendee in our conference. And it's about development. So we gave them a prompt, a set of prompts, sort of guideline for their 10-minute speeches. And it was roughly share how you were a student, how you have been vulnerable, things that have sort of challenged you and shaped you along the way. So that's our flavor of the stories. And we are, before we start, I wanted to coach the audience. I don't know how much it needs it, but it's kind of a fun little thing, is that speakers respond to the audience more than we think. And you're all sitting so lovely and upright, and yet it is post-lunch, so you never know if energy might fade. And so I'm gonna coach you in this, because I teach in this classroom, and it can be these lovely, comfortable seats, right? Where you start to get sync and a little more comfortable, and then pretty soon you're kind of like this, and you know. And so if we could just do a slight exaggeration, like a 10 or 15%, as if you were listening to the most riveting speaker in the world and you were leaning forward just a little bit in your seats, and then your face kind of lights up, and you're like eager, and you're just waiting sort of on the edge of every little droplet pearl wisdom that's tumbling off of a speaker's head. So you've got to be yourselves, and so you can kind of relax back into who you really are, but that kind of energy feeds a speaker. It really does make a difference. All right. I'm just going to introduce, here's the sort of choreography. I'm going to introduce one at a time. We'll just introduce the first speaker, and she'll come up and start, and do roughly a 10, 15-minute talk. Give applause after, once you can sense that it's done, burst into applause. And then we're not taking questions at that point. I'll introduce the second speaker with a short bio, and we'll roll through all 4 speakers. And at the end, we're hoping to have some time for Q&A, and we'll talk you through what that looks like. We have roving mics, etc. So, our first speaker Before I open my mouth, I'm going to make sure it's in my head. Kakul Shrivastava is a tech entrepreneur focused on building companies that empower people to create community. Over her 15-plus-year career, Kakul has helped build some of the most loved consumer products: Adobe Photoshop, Flickr, Yahoo Messenger, and Yahoo Mail. She was the founder and CEO of Tomfoolery, a business dedicated to making beautiful social apps for work. And Tomfoolery was bought by Yahoo in 2014. Most recently, Kakul was the chief product officer for WeWork, which is a $5 billion company focused on empowering millennial entrepreneurs and creators. Kakul is a graduate of MIT with a BS in mechanical engineering, and also holds an MBA from UC Berkeley, Haas School of Business.
Woo! Go Oski!
She currently lives in San Francisco with her husband and 2 children. Kakul, come on up.
Thank you.
Just the right button should do it.
Awesome. Well, I am Kakul Shrivastava. I am an entrepreneur, been a sort of tech exec for a long time, and I'm a mom. I'm here to talk to you about failure. It's really great to talk about failure in a packed audience of 300 plus people. So bear with me as we go along. As Cort said earlier, I am a graduate of the Haas School of Business, and I came here as an engineer with no real life skills at all to approach the world of business. And I left Haas not only knowing what my life's work was going to be, but having met my husband. Thank you, Haas. But I'm going to share a story from when John and I, that's the guy over there, when John and I were first dating. It was late one night. We found ourselves near a playground. There were these monkey bars. I'm like, I've never been able to do those. He's like, oh, come on, everyone can do monkey bars. And I was like, no, I really can't. He's like, come on, do them. I'll catch you if you fall. And so I'm like, all right. I did them, and I fell. And it was this like super embarrassing, awkward tangle of limbs. And as horrible and embarrassing as that moment was, it became a pretty important moment for John and I as we built a relationship over the years. Anytime either of us needed to do something really hard, we would turn to each other and say, will you hold my hand through the scary parts? And will you catch me if I fall? Turns out, even though I looked pretty pleased with myself in that picture, I knew then that in order to succeed in my career, I would need to fall, and I would need to fail. And I think that's really important. That's really the subject of my talk. Before we get started, I actually want you guys to participate in this exercise with me. I'd like each of you to turn to the person next to you, look them in the eye, and say, I promise to catch you if you fall. Give them your something, like an email address, a Twitter handle, a phone number, something. Because in 10 years, when an almost stranger calls you up and says, I totally fucked up my career, I want you to remember this moment. And if you're the person who totally fucked up their career, I want you to remember that there's an almost stranger somewhere in this room who's got your back. And you can call me too. This is my information. Now that we have the insurance out of the way, I want to talk about failure. The reason failure is so important is because it's a requirement for courage. Courage is the ability to do something that frightens someone. The ability to face pain or grief. In order to really know pain or grief and to be able to face it, you have to feel pain or grief. You have to feel failure. So failure is a requirement in order to do acts of courage. So, getting on to the failures. I'm going to share 3 failures from my life with you. This is not a talk I do very often. This is the first time I'm really sharing any of these. So, as I said earlier, bear with me. And after that, I'll talk a little bit about why these failures were important. Failure part 1. Putting it all out there. I failed at breastfeeding. I returned to work after my first maternity leave, armed with all kinds of really important information. You know, I had to breastfeed my child, my son, for a year. This was going to be really essential for his health, for his lungs, for his immune system, for his ability to succeed, for his ability to love me. This was really important. I also came back from my maternity leave to a giant promotion. I was going to be the GM of Flickr. And oh, by the way, Flickr was in total chaos. You know, we had huge internal politics. Our founder had just left. The business was in the red. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And I pumped in meetings. I pumped between meetings. I pumped in airports. I pumped in airplanes. Not fun. And it was really hard for me. It was really hard. And though I struggled with it, I failed. I made it to about 7 months, 1 week, and 5 days. It was my first real challenge as a working mother, and I failed at it. This was a failure. It was an important failure. It felt like a really big failure. But it was a personal failure. I didn't really set womankind back. You know, no one got fired over it. My son, who's now 8, has found some way to love me. You know, so it was, you know, turns out I was able to like make much bigger failures over time. So failure number 2, 2009, Flickr was growing. The user base was growing in 2-digit numbers. It was a profitable business. The team was solid. Things were looking really good. But I was completely burnt out. I was the bridge between the passionate users that Flickr had and this very interesting large company called Yahoo that was going through these very, very big executive changes nearly every 6 months. And being that bridge between these two very different cultures was exhausting, especially when the people that you were trying to convince kept changing every 6 months. And I was just wiped. I could not do it anymore. And I remember feeling like such a failure because I couldn't do it anymore. I remember calling up Stuart Butterfield, the founder of Flickr, and just crying on the phone, "I'm sorry, Stuart, I just can't do it anymore." And he laughed at me. He's like, "Oh, it's fine, you're fine. You did enough, it's all right." But it wasn't really all right. It wasn't really all right because I felt like I was letting down my team, this team that had relied on me to shelter them from this chaos at this large company. I was letting down these users who loved this product and really believed in it. And I felt like I was really, you know, letting down the startup communities to some extent because Flickr was this very unique product in the market at the time. And perhaps the hardest thing of all was people did lose their jobs over it. There were a lot of really great people who worked at Flickr who had to get laid off because of the various things that were happening at Yahoo at the time. Some that I had to lay off myself. So definitely a bigger failure to some extent. Still went on to do bigger failures. Failure part 3. So sometime in 2012, I created this document called Project Blue. And it contained thoughts about a revolution that I thought needed to happen in the world. Now, I looked at all the products that I used in my personal life, Instagram, Snapchat, others. And they were beautiful, innovative, cool, interesting. They really allowed me to connect with other people. And then I looked at the products that I used in my work life, where I spent, you know, enormous, probably the biggest portion of my waking hours. And they were all terrible. They were all really designed to be used by monkeys or androids or both. Android monkeys. And I thought something needs to be done about this. What should be done about this? And if there was a company that was built to do this, what would that company need to embody? What would the culture need to embody? What would the values need to embody? And those thoughts and those ideas became this company that I built with some like-minded folks called Tomfoolery Incorporated. We built it. We launched our first product in 3 months. Got a lot of great press. We had users who really loved our product. We started working on our second product. And we got a very interesting offer from Yahoo. We knew the people at the company who wanted to acquire us, and we knew that they were great people. There were a lot of things that were really good about the offer. And so we decided that we would sell the company. And as a rational choice, it was exactly the right thing. It was the right thing for my team. It was the right thing for my co-founders. It was the right thing for Yahoo. Everybody was happy. But I couldn't help but feel that I had failed again. Because I had this dream to change the world, to impact millions of lives. And I'd built a product that really was showing that it could start to do that. And I hadn't done it. I hadn't done it yet. So this felt like a pretty big failure. Why do I talk about these failures? And why were these failures important, as hard as it is to talk about them right now? Turns out that I think like all of us, I'm failure-powered. I had to embrace these failures because I wanted to do something bigger. I wanted to be ambitious. I wanted to dream big. So this is a picture of my son helping varnish tables when we were moving into the first Tomfoolery office. Because I was willing to embrace that failure in my first year of working motherhood, I was able to experience this. I was able to experience having a son who was so proud of having a CEO mom. I wouldn't change this win, for the fear of that failure at all. This was such a profound and important moment for me. Because I was willing to risk having that failure of carrying that Sisyphusian burden of being the bridge between Flickr and Yahoo, I was able to work with some of the smartest. I'm the Indian woman in the middle. I was able to experience the thrill of working with some of the smartest, coolest, most interesting people to build truly innovative product and to build a product that inspired the next generation of startups. So it was absolutely worth it for me to have that failure. And before we moved into that office, we were all crammed into this tiny room. This was 500 square feet. And because I was willing to embrace the failure, the potential failure of being an entrepreneur, I was able to experience this. To go from a handful of dreams written down in a Google Doc to a company where our users loved our product, the press loved our story, and I got to pull all these crazy people together to build this company. And I got to be, in countless VC CEO breakfasts and lunches and dinners, I got to be the only woman in the room. The only woman in the room. We have to change that. Is it hashtag invest in all? God damn it, invest in all. Before I wrap up my talk, I want to talk about one more failure, a bonus failure. I look at the news in the industry today, particularly in the technology industry, and I'm really embarrassed. And I think, how did I fail? Here I am, I'm a woman in the tech world. I've succeeded, I've done well, I've leaned in, I've mentored, I've been mentored, I've done all the things. Why is this still the story? It's 2015, goddammit. And I think, have we failed? And I don't think we failed. I think we've actually succeeded in millions of ways. But we've dreamed bigger, and we want much, much more. And there's an army of us still to come. I've recently gotten involved with an organization called Wright Academy. It's a dev boot camp aimed at women. It just teaches women how to code. And before I started working with them, I said, can I attend a class? And when I attended the class, I was blown away by my peers, by my fellow students. These are women who are coming from all walks of life. You know, there's a EA in the room, there is a massage therapist in the room, there's a woman who's an office manager, a woman who's coordinator for UPS. And they're all here because they want to do something different. They want to be bigger, they want to dream bigger. And they know the first program they write won't work. Their code will fail. And they're willing to embrace that failure to get to that dream that they have. So what I want to leave you with is just a couple of questions. One, what failure are you willing to embrace because you want to dream bigger? And do you have the ambition to take on and risk bigger and bigger and more ambitious failures over time? Because remember, we, the people in this room, are here and we will catch you if you fall.
Kakul, that was wonderful. Sitting there listening, I had sort of waves of failure envy. I mean, yeah, thank you. Kelly Wright is our next speaker. Kelly leads worldwide sales for Tableau software, and she brings 20 years of experience in leadership in various sales roles, including 4 years at Tableau, selling the company's award-winning applications. She's previously held positions at a number of high-profile companies, including VP at Ad Hoc, which is a major venture-backed software company down in the Valley, and sales and management positions at Southwestern Inc., at Dale Carnegie, and at Bank of America. She has an MBA from Wharton, and she has an undergraduate degree from Stanford. Represent. Kelly's also spent time both at Bain and McKinsey, helping executives solve strategic questions around organizational structures, operations, pricing, and international expansion. Please give a warm welcome to Kelly Wright.
Good afternoon. Wow, there's a lot of energy in this room. So I thought I'd start off with the elephant that's in the room of, yes, I did go to Stanford. I know there's a lot of Berkeley folks here. But I actually do have a pretty close affinity to Berkeley. In my family, we have 4 generations, 4 that attended UC Berkeley. I was the defect. I was the one that went. But actually, my grandmother was one of the very first women to graduate with a degree in business from UC Berkeley. So I thought I'd reflect back on how Cort initially introduced us, of that we're 4 full adults. And I thought I'd just start off by saying my kids don't necessarily always agree with that. They vacillate between me being extremely immature and they can't believe I'm a mom, or I'm a senior citizen that has been alive for hundreds of years and can't relate. So the theme today, though, is women in leadership. So people ask me all the time, what's it like to be a woman in leadership, especially a woman in sales and technology, which both tend to be fields that have very few women. And the question always makes me chuckle a bit, because it makes me wonder, how many men do you think get that question? What's it like to be a male in leadership? I'm guessing it doesn't happen that often. But whether you're a male or a female, the core tenets of leadership are really the same. And what I would challenge each of you to do is just, no matter what you are doing, just strive to be a leader. So whether you're an individual contributor, a manager, an executive, and regardless of what field you go into, ask yourself, what are you going to do to push the envelope and to make yourself be identified as a leader? And that's really been a core premise of how I've led my entire career and my life as well. Now, when I think about leadership, leadership in business, or whatever field you choose, is actually really similar to leadership in sports. So let's walk through that analogy. Think of an Olympic gold medal team. So this is a team of all highly achieving individuals. These are people that are operating literally at the top of their game. And each individual member, every single athlete on an Olympic team, is a leader. She's pushing the envelope. She's striving to be at the absolute top of her game. And she believes she can do really incredible things. And as I think about my role at Tableau, I started 10 years ago as the first salesperson at Tableau. And now, in leading the team, I think of myself as an active participant. I'm an athlete, as well as the coach of this Olympic team. And so I've done a fair amount of research of what is it like for an Olympian, and what are the core characteristics that it takes to actually be able to achieve at that level. And the first is very much the same theme as what we just heard talked about. It's strength through adversity. And a lot of people don't think about this as being a real core tenet of leadership or success. But to be a leader, let's think first about the Olympian. To be an Olympian, someone has to really be willing to face adverse conditions. I mean, to be an Olympian, most of them have been training since they were really young, getting up really early in the morning, staying up really late, not going on vacations when all their friends were vacationing, not hanging out in the afternoon. There are a lot of sacrifices. But not only is it hard work, but they have to be willing to take and face failure. Because to do incredible things, as we just heard talked about, you have to be able to push the envelope. You have to be able to step outside of your comfort zone. And that's really hard. Because human nature, people are risk averse. But leaders know how to take risks. And if you're willing to take risks, you absolutely will fail. I could go on for hours and days and months and years about all of my failures in my career and in all other aspects of life. But you have to be willing to step outside of those boundaries. And that's what the Olympians do. They don't win all the time, but they know what they have to do to set themselves up for success. And thinking about that in terms of my own personal life, I thought I'd tell you a story. So back in college, when I was at Stanford, for 4 years during college, I sold educational books door to door. These weren't always friendly conditions. So I worked 80 hours a week, 14 hours a day, at least 6 days a week, talking to at least 30 families each and every day, showing them these educational guides to help their kids. And I did it carrying a very heavy book bag that weighed about 25 pounds, and I would be walking briskly or running door to door. And you know what happened? When you knock door to door, there are a lot of people, more than you would think, that literally slam the door in your face. Some of you may have done it as well. It's okay. But it's hard. It's hard being a college student and having people over and over again slamming doors in your face. So then I had to make a choice. Was I going to go to the next door? Was I going to just continue to go and persevere? Or was I going to let it get me down? And that actually leads into one of the next real characteristics, which is the power of emotion. And so back to that story, I had to make a choice. When someone slammed the door in my face, I didn't know what happened to that person. I didn't know what was going on in their day. But I could make a choice. Was I going to let it get me down and get me frustrated and really bum me out? Which then meant that when I got to the next door, I was dour and frowning. Well, that wouldn't be good for that next interaction. Or was I going to pick myself up, say, feel a little bit bad for that person, having a bad day. I'm going to go next door with a smile on my face, start fresh, and just keep on going. And I think a lot of the foundation of what I do in my career came from these 4 summers of selling books. Hard work, perseverance, and learning how to keep on going. But think about it for an Olympian. They say a glass is half full or a glass is half empty. What paradigm do you think the Olympian is coming from? Absolutely from the glass is half empty. I'm sorry, half full. I was seeing if you were paying attention. But absolutely, is the glass half full, right? Because you wouldn't have an Olympian thinking about all these negative things. What they're doing is they're talking to themselves in a really positive way, because the emotions and what's going on in your head is so, so critical. So this is one of my favorite quotes. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So what are you thinking in your head? What thoughts are going through your mind? Because you have a lot of control over your own success based on what is between your 2 ears. And it's interesting because people think all the time about the food they eat. Well, the food that I eat, it's actually going to impact their well-being. Everyone knows that. People know that how much sleep they have, that's going to impact them, how much exercise. But people often forget, well, what about your thoughts? What are you thinking? And what's going on in here has such an impact, and the Olympians are so fantastic at being able to calibrate that. So ask yourself, think about even just today, or what you're doing this week. Are you thinking like an Olympian? Purpose and vision. Another core traits of Olympians. Think about a runner like this, an Olympic runner. She is visualizing exactly what it's going to be like to win that race. And when we're talking visualize, not just thinking about it, literally putting herself in the moment. What is it going to be like to run through that finish line and actually feel that ribbon break on her belly? What is it going to hear? What sound is she going to hear in the crowd when they're all cheering? How is the wind going to feel against her face? What are the thoughts that she's going to be thinking when she realizes, I just won? And as she prepares for what's it going to be like when she gets to go up on the podium and have that gold medal put over her neck. It's actually putting yourself in the moment, and with a lot of purpose. In the fire in the belly is what I like to talk about, of actually having a purpose of why are you doing this. Now there's a famous TED Talk that's by Simon Sinek, and the talk, I see nodding heads, so maybe some people have seen it. It's about what inspires, or how great leaders inspire action. And he says it's because of the why, not the what. And at Tableau, we're a very mission-focused company. So our mission is to help people see and understand data. Yes, we're a software company. That's what we do. We sell software. But why we get so passionate about it is the purpose. When we can help people to be able to answer their own questions with data and information, we're empowering people to be able to do incredible things. The ones that get me fired up are when the teachers and administrators, they can use Tableau to literally keep at-risk kids in school. Or the doctors and the nurses who are using our software to save lives in the ER. That's impactful. And so the people at Tableau, They're selling and motivated to do what we do because of why, the impact of why we are doing what we do, not the what. So ask yourself, can you actually get passionate about the why? Don't get too caught up in the what. People. People underestimate how important it is of who you surround yourself with. Let's go back to the Olympic athletes. On an Olympic team, every single member of that Olympic team is an Olympian. Every single person is operating at the top of her game. And they all know that they can surround themselves with the best people. They want to put the best possible team together. Now, another mistake I made early in my career is I thought, sometimes it actually feels really good to be the big fish in the little pond, to be the one that's getting some recognition and attention. Doesn't really help you in the long term. That's very short-term focused. So I always look at, and my advice would be, is what can you do to always try to surround yourself with people who are better, who are smarter, who are more talented, because they're going to help you to up your game. And then you can actually put together this Olympic team. Now at Tableau, people ask me all the time, you're a fast-growing company, the team's really big. Kelly, what keeps you awake at night? And I think they're often expecting me to say, it's the competition, or market conditions, or something with our product. But my answer is always the same. What keeps me up at night is the people. What can I do to make sure that we're always assembling the best and the brightest people at the top of their game? Because in any company, it's people who solve problems. And it's people who build the company. So although people are really important, and I'd put it near the top of my list, along with all these others, when I did the research, because I actually did a ton of research about what are the traits of Olympians, since that's the way we like to run the team. And there's always one trait that comes at the very top. Olympians have one core trait that they all have. And that last trait is belief. Olympians believe they are going to win. They believe it all the way down to their core. And because they believe it so strongly, they're able to really focus on every single step along the way of what they need to do to make sure that they're able to win. And it was funny when I found this, because I did this research about a year ago. Because if you see, people are so excited about the belief. But about a year ago, I did this research, and if you were to have asked anyone that works with me, what's Kelly's shtick? What's her main thing? They would all say it's belief. Because in order to operate high-powered teams, you need to get that team to believe that they can operate at the highest level. And that's really hard to do. So you need to be able to show all those steps of how people can get there. So one story just to illustrate this is back in the 1950s, there was a huge initiative focused on breaking the 4-minute mile. Do people know this story? Seeing a lot of nodding heads. The 4-minute mile had been a goal that people had been talking about for roughly 1,000 years. And actually, doctors and research said it was physically impossible. Absolutely impossible to do a 4-minute mile. The body couldn't do it. But this man, does anyone know who this is? Roger Bannister. On May 6, 1954, he broke the 4-minute mile. He ran 3 minutes and 59 seconds. And he was able to get to that because he had such a core belief that he could do it. Yes, he trained a lot. Yes, he worked really hard, but he believed someone was going to break it, so why not it be him? Despite everything that all the medical professionals had said. And after he broke it, do you know what happened? It got broken again and again and again. Now there's been over 1,000 people who have run faster than a 4-minute mile, and the current record stays at 3 minutes and 43 seconds. So to just wrap this all up, the main takeaway is just do what it takes to be a leader. Don't wait for someone to ask you. Raise your hand, think like an Olympian, push the envelope and push your boundaries, take some risks. Pay attention to your thoughts, surround yourself with really phenomenal people, but most importantly, you need to have that belief. Because as you think about your leadership, really the most important thing is what you're thinking up here. So use it wisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Our third speaker, John Thompson, is Chief Operating Officer and one of the founders of Intero Real Estate Services. Intero Real Estate Services, which is a leading U.S. real estate brokerage headquartered here in Silicon Valley. With more than a quarter century of real estate experience in sales, development, and management, Mr. Thompson has led Intero to become one of the fastest growing companies in the history of real estate. Mr. Thompson also created Intero's nonprofit, which is called the Intero Foundation. And that foundation is funded by Intero agents themselves as a way to give back to the community that Intero serves. Born and raised here in Silicon Valley. I keep saying here in Silicon Valley. I want to identify with it. We aren't quite in it, but I'm colonizing that for Berkeley. Mr. Thompson did receive his BA here in business administration with an emphasis in finance and marketing from Berkeley back in 1985. Welcome, John Thompson, please.
Thank you, Cort, and thank you, everybody. It's an honor to be here today at this conference. And as I was looking over the agenda, go Bears, by the way. I don't know about you, all right? I might not be able to turn my back on her, but you know, it is interesting as I heard Kakul and Kelly speak. You know, the similar messages I think you're going to hear from all of us today, just from different points of view. But as I was looking over the agenda today, it did appear to me that I might be the only male sharing ideas up here today, if that wasn't obvious to you already. And I am comfortable with that. You know, I'm okay with it. I have plenty of practice in this space. Not being male, of course. I've been practicing that, you know, my whole life. But let me explain a little bit of my background. I did graduate from Cal, and when I was here, I actually lived in a sorority, Alpha Epsilon Phi. All right. Yeah, I don't even think it's in existence anymore. They had a big house on Piedmont Circle. We just drove by it today. Just wanted to see it. It was a large house. It had more rooms than girls. They needed the revenue, so they rented out the rooms to male boarders. To this day, I do hope that house mother has recovered. I'm not sure. Ms. Herrick, if you're still around, you know, I sincerely apologize. So from there, my first job was at Esprit in San Francisco. Now, many of you may or may not remember that company. It is a women's clothing manufacturer in San Francisco. I think it's pretty much now defunct. But again, probably the male to female employee ratio there was 80% female, 20% male at that company. From there in 1987, I got into real estate. And there's not a state across the entire country that does not have a higher female to male ratio of women to men in the business. So my entire life, I've been surrounded by strong, passionate, influential women. And to this day, I still have my mother reminding me of that anytime I get offline, all right? So that's what I mean by, as I said, I'm comfortable in this space. So today I'm the COO and one of the founders of Intero Real Estate Services, known as one of the most successful startup companies in Silicon Valley, not started in a garage, all right? It was just a really nice carport. So if you strip away all the titles, that I've carried in a company, in a startup. You carry a lot of different titles as your company grows. If you strip everything away in designations, there's really one thing you ask me, well, John, what do you do at Intero? And I do what a lot of leaders do in any organization, right? It really boils down to I help people get what they want, all right? So after 28 years in this business and 13 years working at Intero, I'm just going to share with you 5 short lessons of things I've learned about leadership and building an organization with my time at Intero. So I've entitled the first lesson, Breaking Bad. Can we talk about this? I mean, has there anybody not seen this show? I think 7 billion people saw it, so there might be a few of you in here that did not see this show, right? Walter White, a struggling high school chemistry teacher, gets cancer, wants to provide a financial future for his family, so he becomes a murdering drug dealer, all right? Now, okay, so maybe he went a little bit off kilter on his mission, all right? We understand that, but let's talk about what Walter did right. And you've already heard some of what he did right today, right? First of all, did he know what he wanted? And was he passionate about getting it? Was anything going to stop him, right? Never mind what he was doing. Didn't matter what he was doing, right? The more important message was exactly what you heard from Kelly, is why was he doing it? Do you remember what he said throughout the whole series? Why was he doing what he was doing? For his family, right? I did it, I'm doing this for the family, right? So as awkward as what he ended up being, let's give him credit on the leadership principles that he did succeed in. He knew what he wanted and why, all right? So those principles, it ended up turning a rather passive high school professor into a driven, passionate person that wanted to go after what he wanted at all costs, right? Now, again, you apply these principles to something good instead of what he went after, and you'll end up moving mountains instead of moving, motorhomes full of meth, all right? You won't get any ratings, but there's still these things to learn from Walter. And I learned some of these similar things right here from this institution. I was rejected from Cal the first time I applied. I applied to Cal and I applied to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. I wanted to go to Cal. Cal Poly accepted me, Cal rejected me. Didn't like that, all right? So the Walter White in me said, that's it, I'm calling the admissions office and I'm going to drive up there and find out why in the world you would not want me, all right? Because I think I'm good for the school will be good for me, this is where I want to go, it's the best damn school in the state, all right? And so figured I'd get a bigger applause for that one. And I guess it was the beginning of my eventual sales career, because somehow I convinced the admissions office to accept me, all right? Now, it was conditional, but I accepted all those conditions because this is what I wanted. And I knew why I wanted to be here, and I was very fortunate that they reversed their decision. So thank you to Cal and thank you to Walter for the lessons that they've given us on this, right? Now, before we run out and purchase Winnebagos and some, chemistry beakers, let's review one real quick second where Walter went wrong, okay? So originally we said it was about, he was doing it for his family, right? So the cause was bigger than himself, correct? Whenever you have a cause in whatever you're going to be doing as a leader and in life that's bigger than yourself, you will succeed, okay? You need to find that. But in the end of Breaking Bad, what did we ultimately find out about Walter? Was it really about his family? For those of you that watched the show. What did he say in the end to his wife? Who was it about? Moi. It's about me. I did it for me, right? So it was inevitable that whatever he was going to do, be it for good or for bad, that it was going to fail. The cause was not greater than himself. We need to learn that. And as leaders, you're going to need to learn how to set your ego aside, right? If you're going to lead. Leading is all about vision, mission, and purpose. And it's not about you, okay? One of the best things I learned. So why did Intero, the company I founded, survive the subprime disaster that happened in 2007 and 8 and 9? I have my feelings because our company has a cause greater than itself, all right? We're about developing people. We have a foundation that thrives because we exist. In fact, one of the beneficiaries is here. If you saw the grateful garment out front, Lisa Blanchard, the founder there, they've been one of the beneficiaries of the Intero Foundation and the efforts that we've put into making a cause bigger than the company itself, really developing people and helping giving back and donating into the community, helping people that can't help themselves. Look, I don't know if that's the reason, but I like that definition. I like that story, and I feel in my heart that is one of the reasons that we survived. There was a greater cause at work in our company to make it work. So make the cause greater than yourself and be relentless about going after what you want. Lesson number 2, the Big Dipper. This will go coincide with a lot of what you heard from Kakul, the historic roller coaster in Santa Cruz, right? So I have 2 boys. They're 10 and 12. They used to like the merry-go-round, right? Last year, they started being intrigued, interested, curious about the Big Dipper. They were both scared, frightened, thrilled, sick to their stomach, butterflies. They had all of these things all wrapped up in one about the Big Dipper, whether or not they wanted to go on the ride. Just as your leadership journey will be, you're going to experience all of those same feelings when you decide to go on the Big Dipper. The merry-go-round, okay, not bad, but Dad, my kid said, it's kind of boring, just goes round and round and round. Doesn't go anywhere. The Big Dipper is a lot more exciting. If you're going to do anything worthy, anything exciting at all, be prepared for the ride of the Big Dipper. Trust that it's going to go up and down, success and fail, success and fail. It's going to do that, right? As long as you remain on the track, you will survive. All right? It's all part of the journey. So I started my career in 1987. I spent 3 years riding the Big Dipper up the track, building a pretty successful business. And then October 1987 came. Does everybody remember what happened? Was anybody even born then, in this room? We had an earthquake here, all right? Kind of not really good for the real estate industry to have an earthquake, especially the size that we had. In addition to that, followed up with, we had the S&L crisis that happened back in the late 80s and early 90s. In addition to that, the Cold War ended, right? And we were dependent on a lot of defense industry jobs here in Silicon Valley. And without jobs, not a lot of people like to buy houses, right? And then I had a development project that I was involved in went bad. By 1994, I'd lost everything I'd worked for in 7 years. Part of the process, part of the Big Dipper ride you're going to be on, in your journey, all right? For 7 years in this business, I was now in a place worse than when I started my career. In fact, it was worse. I had a negative net worth. So I spent the following years rebuilding my life and business. The Dipper started going up again, and in 2002, I had the opportunity to be founder of a new company that I'm at now called Intero. And after 7 hard years, my plane up flying high again, all right, I was going to jump out of it and start another company. Right? And that was exactly why, because I'd already been on autopilot. And whenever you're on autopilot, you're back on that merry-go-round. Jump off it. All right? Because complacency is something you can't have as a leader, you can't have in life and in business. So once that happens, get off that merry-go-round. So we're continuing to climb, and Intero was originally funded by an angel investor. We had 5 really good years. Then that angel investor had other businesses that started to go bad. And it started to pull our baby down the drain with the rest of his dirty bathwater. So 4 of us rallied together, collected the funds, and bought the company away from this investor in 2007. I don't know if you remember what happened in 2007. More great timing for me on this Big Dipper roller coaster ride. All right? The world imploded. Lehman Brothers, Washington Mutual, more bankruptcies and deficiencies and defaults than we'll probably ever see again. That was right when I invested all of my eggs into this company, all right? So for the second time in a little over 10 years, I'd lost everything. Right? Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd invested, right? I was borrowing money. I was refinancing my parents' home to make payroll and expenses, me and my partners, all right? So including the Berkeley College Fund, it had to go, right? Go Foothill Junior College. I was telling my kids, all right? So as you go through life and as you go through this journey, right, things are going to get taken from you. It's just part of life. It's part of what's going to happen, right? Only then do you really understand what's valuable and what's important, right? But you only really start learning that. You only really start understanding it once you start losing stuff. And I've lost it many times, all right? In 2009, I was 30 days away from taking my family and my 175-pound English Mastiff back home to mom and dad's house, right? The key that I never returned to them when I left the house at 18 was now going to be my new front door key again at age 45. It was pretty depressing, right? That roller coaster had hit rock bottom again for me. But what the financial crisis and what we went through, right? What it didn't take from me was my family, my friends, my faith, my work ethic, my experiences, and my soul. All right? And the reality is it took everything from me that really wasn't that valuable. If there's one lesson that I'd love to have everybody take away and just grasp today, that it's that, all right? Make sure you value character over all the comforts in life, right? The comforts can come and go. Your character remains forever. I wish this message to everybody. It's a little hard, right? I know it, to understand it. It's kind of like trying to explain a fish what it's like to walk on land, right? And the only way that can happen is to experience walking on land versus thousands of years of hearing and talking about it. But please take that message away from my points this morning. So 5 years later, in 2014, right? We survived. We came out. We believed in this company. We believed we were doing something that was great. And somehow, through the grace of God, either through stupidity of not quitting, right, or just the sheer will, or maybe there was some other, something else magical happening. I tell you why I think it happened, right? Because we had a cause greater than the company itself. But we survived. And in 2014, we caught the attention of one Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, and we honored to be acquired by them. So that roller coaster came back up. Thank you. So it's going to be a wild ride, all right? The only thing that's going to make your ride more exciting on the ride you're going to be on than the dipper, all right, is going to be it's not going to necessarily come right back around where it started. You're not going to know exactly where it's going to end, and you wouldn't want it to. Who wants to watch a movie or a sporting event where the outcome is already predictable, all right? It takes all the mystery and fun out of what we do in life. All right? So accept that as part of the process. My third point, 8-minute abs. Move fast here. We're living in a world where it's becoming more and more difficult to avoid the desires of instant gratification, aren't we? Right? How fast things happened yesterday, it's way too slow for today, right? You get upset when the photo doesn't load fast enough on your phone, right? I know, I see everyone nodding their head. Listen, it's going to space and back. Give it time, okay? The masses want 8-minute abs. Hell, I want 8-minute abs, right? Let me just tell you, 8-minute abs, from where I stand now and running companies and being in business, they do not exist, okay? So you're probably all smart enough to know that, but I'm just reassuring you they do not exist. And even if they did, they wouldn't be cool anymore. You know why? Because everybody would have them, right? So it would be nothing special anymore. So what's happened to us? We've grown into a society that wants everything so fast and so easy. And the reality is success and leadership and everything you're going to do is generally not going to happen fast and easy. Okay, we need to accept that now. It's supposed to be hard. There's a great line Tom Hanks gives in A League of Their Own. It's supposed to be hard. It's the hard that makes it great. He tells Gina Davis that when he's talking about baseball, right? It's a fabulous line, and it applies here in leadership. Once it's too easy, the reward diminishes across the board, okay? So building a real estate career, building a real estate company, whatever it is you're going to build out of this room, it's going to take more than 8 minutes a day, all right, to build that muscle. And as a leader, we need to set the right expectations for yourself and everybody that you are going to lead in your organizations. Don't get sucked into that instant gratification philosophy. You're going to be tasked with helping people decide what they want and help them show the way to achieve their dreams. And why do people give up on their dreams? I always get asked this question. Why do people give up on their dreams? All right? It's pretty easy, right? One explanation is life has simply become, as I said, too easy. Right? I know that may sound funny, but it's just become too easy. For most of us in this room, we don't have to deal with things like starvation or homelessness We have a bed to sleep in, a roof over our head. We have a pizza or Starbucks virtually on every corner. If you have to walk 100 blocks, or 100, that would be really irritating. If you had to walk 100 feet, 100 yards to find a nearest coffee shop, you get irritated. So you can access the internet sitting on a chair in the sky in a plane. Life's pretty amazing. Life has become pretty easy, right? It's pretty easy. I had to write this down. It's pretty easy to grow up, put your dreams and passions behind you while you settle for a job you don't really mind, getting married, have 2.01 kids, eat for 3.6 years, sleep for 25 years, spend 1.5 years in the bathroom and watch TV for 9.1 years, and live a totally average life. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay, all right? But there's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing great about it either. There's nothing inspiring about it either. For most people, life is going to be, and your business is going to be, if you're really going to pursue a dream, it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. And as a leader, it's your job to find that out and all the people that follow you and constantly remind them and hold them accountable to what it's going to take and let them know, all right? Because the minute you don't do that, easy creeps back in. I'm going to skip and end here as I need to wrap up. The last thing I'm going to share with you is soap. Last lesson I've learned, right? Have any of you seen on YouTube the Dove Real Beauty sketches? It's also been seen by almost as many people that watch Breaking Bad, so I assume, there's an interesting reaction to everybody that's watched that. No matter what your reaction is, there's an underlying message there that's very powerful, especially for everybody looking to take on a leadership role. Now, the irony is not lost in me that I know this is a cosmetic company that produced this video. So there may be ulterior motives around it, right? But it involves a police sketch artist, right, who invites people in, puts them behind a curtain, and asks that person to describe themselves. And he sketches a picture. And then the person leaves and he never sees them. And then he invites somebody else in to sit down that has met this person and observe them, and then asks that person, puts that sketch away, puts a new one, and asks that person, please describe the other person that you just met. And he sketches that photo. And then they put the two photos side by side. Do you think they look alike? What do you think people's general self-perception of themselves are versus what other people think? Are they similar? Do you think that people see themselves better or worse? Way worse. Way worse across the board, right? And I realized this was focused on outward beauty. I got that. But honestly, do you think if somehow you could sketch inward, would the experiment have given you any different results? I don't know. I think not, right? I think not. I think inside we'd have the same results. So look, you're going to help people get what you want, and if there's one thing you're going to have to focus on as great leaders, it's going to be to build the self-confidence and self-esteem in the people that are around you, the people you're connected with, your team, everybody around you. It's needed now today more than ever, because it matters. It matters how we see ourselves. It impacts everything we do, from the job you take, from how you treat your kids, to the friends you have, to the mate you choose in life. It impacts everything. It can't be more critical to our happiness and long-term success. What we think is actually real. What we see is an illusion. What we think is real, what we see is the illusion. How we respond to stimulus or circumstances, that's real. The stimulus and circumstance itself, that's an illusion. Here's a short example, and then I'm going to quit. In business, two shoe salespeople. They're sent to a third world village. The next day, the first salesperson calls back home and says, hey, nobody here wears shoes. I'll be home tomorrow. A few hours later, the second salesperson calls back to the company and says, great news. Nobody here wears shoes. Send inventory. All right? That's what I'm talking about what you see. All right, is the reality. If you see the world as a beautiful place filled with opportunity, you are going to behave and act differently. And it's your job as a leader to have that yourself and to create that in other people. Finally, the odds? They've calculated the odds, and And I saw this from another TED Talk, right? I can't remember the name of the gal that mentioned it, but it's fabulous. The odds of us actually sitting here today, you know, that you were born at this time, to the parents you had, here in this location, with all the wars and migrations and everything, and all the permutations that happened on this planet, the odds of you sitting here today, you know what that is? 1 in 400 trillion is what they figured out. So here's the fact. We are as unique and special and downright awesome as it can possibly be. Every single one of you. Help everybody understand this as a leader. Help them see themselves as beautiful, strong, and as powerful as the world sees them. We all already have what it takes. And if we do this together and we apply some of these principles and ideas that I shared, we will empower the entire planet. If not for me, do it for a cause greater than myself, as I talked about with Walter White. Do it for a cause greater than itself. Do it for the Berkeley admissions office so they can be proud about their decision that they reversed my original rejection letter, all right? So thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. Our final speaker is Tanya Holland. Tanya is now the executive chef and owner of Brown Sugar Kitchen and B-Side Barbecue in Oakland, California. It's a destination. It's worth going to. Chef Holland received her formal French training in Burgundy, France, and received a Grand Diplôme. She has served as host and expert on soul food for the Melting Pot series on the Food Network and the Cooking Channel, and is regularly featured on the Today Show. The city of Oakland, just a couple of years ago, declared it was June 5th, 2012, as Tanya Holland Day for her, quote, significant role in creating community and establishing Oakland as a culinary center. Tanya was awarded the 2013 California Chef of the Year by the California Travel Association. Please welcome Tanya Holland.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to park here. I'm not doing all that walking around. I do that all day. Plus, I don't have any pockets for my mic thing there. Well, it's great to be here. I was going to say, everybody's California. I don't listen to those, but I'm East Coast. Any East Coast people in the house? I grew up in Rochester, New York, and I graduated from University of Virginia. When I was a young girl, I once asked my dad if I could be president. And I was talking about POTUS, President of the United States. At the time, some of the examples were a peanut farmer and an actor. So I thought, I guess your training doesn't have to be that specific. Well, he said yes, which looking back was pretty amazing, considering no women or people of color had yet to even consider stepping into that race. This was the 1970s, but he wouldn't recommend it. He said yes, but he wouldn't recommend it. He actually said something a little more graphic, but I was trying to be nice, you know. He's like, there's a lot of people blowing smoke up your butt. That's what he said. So that's my dad. He said it costs a lot of money and there's a lot of stress involved. Right, I said that. Later on, I asked him if I could be an architect, and he said, you won't make any money. So I guess that wasn't a recommendation. And a few years down the road, I became obsessed with the film and TV show Fame, a show about kids in a performing arts high school. What I loved most about this program was the diversity of the student body. So I asked him if I could be a dancer, and he said he'd never put a dancer through school. Oh, well. So he said, go to engineering school. When you graduate, you can name your price and then work a few years and get your MBA. By the way, my dad was recruiting minority engineers and MBAs for Eastman Kodak at the time. So he kind of knew what he was talking about, but I didn't listen. Although I was excelling in math and science at the time, it really wasn't what I wanted to do. My dad was pragmatic, to say the least, maybe a little conservative, not a big risk taker. Obviously, I wasn't discouraged because now I'm president of my own company. I'm the architect of my environment, and I select the music I play at my restaurant so I can dance around all I want. So I win, and the best part is that I'm a businesswoman and I'm an entrepreneur. Yes. And by the way, I majored in Russian language and literature, which comes in handy for conversation at dinner parties, and that's about it. In my mid-20s, after exploring several combinations of jobs, at one point I was selling ad space during the day for classified advertising at a Gannett paper, and then I was waiting tables at an Italian restaurant at night. That lasted about a year. Then another year later, I was an admin assistant at an advertising agency during the day, and then I was a salesperson at Barney's department store during the evening, just running from job to job, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Finally, I determined that I wanted to be a restaurateur. I was spending, I always had a part-time restaurant job, and I just loved the industry. I had worked for a few restaurants, and there was just something about it that just seemed magical to me. It appealed to all of my desires and goals to be president, dancer, and architect. And even if I just worked with those people, it was just something that I wanted to do. I wanted to create environment. I could be a decorator, I could be the hostess, I could be the wine expert. It was very interdisciplinary. In the restaurant business, you also get to work with people from all places, all backgrounds, ethnicity, economic, social, religious, and I mean, there's so many differences. It was like traveling, it was a year abroad that I didn't have when I worked in a restaurant. And my parents always taught me to embrace other people's cultures and to always make people feel comfortable and welcome. They taught me how to share, and they taught me hospitality. So it's no surprise I'm in the hospitality business. I did eventually get my year abroad. I went to cooking school in France. I got a Grand Diplôme. I decided on this route as I witnessed that the most successful restaurateurs were chef owners, or they were owners who really knew the food, so they could hire the right chef. Finally, I realized that my studies of foreign languages and cultures were going to matter. So the following 10 years after cooking school, I spent working grueling hours in often environments that were, let's just say, not so welcoming to someone who looked like me. I didn't have the words then, but I was probably thinking, empower me, invest in me. It'll be worth it. I'll work so hard for you. Just give me a chance. I tried to prove myself over and over again to people who just couldn't see it and wouldn't give me a chance. This is where I ran into some of my biggest challenges. Early in my career, I worked at a restaurant that I was very excited about. It was a French bistro. There was so much to learn. I wanted to learn how to butcher, roast, saute, grill, everything I saw my coworkers doing. I started off in the salad station, which is normal. You start off, at the bottom. And next I moved on to hot appetizers. And then the saute position became available, which is what I really wanted. I worked during the summer at Martha's Vineyard at a bistro, and I had tried saute, and I just loved it. It was just like, hot pans, lots of moving parts. And finally, an opening came, and the chef said to me, well, you could take that position, but it'll be very challenging. And the pastry chef position is now open. That would be a lot easier for you. I was in shock. I wanted a challenge. I didn't want the easy road. The fact of the matter was that it was still very much a male-dominated industry, and most of the males I worked with or worked for couldn't see me as their equal. And if I wanted to take the easy road, I would have graduated from engineering school and got my MBA. Right? No, I'm just kidding. I had to get that one in. I had fun when I came up with that one. Thank you. But it was clear that he wasn't going to empower me or invest in me. So I gave notice. I moved on to the next restaurant. I discovered that I'm non-traditional in my chosen field. There are not many people out there in the industry that look like me. Not many executive chefs and restaurateurs are people of color, or even more so a woman of color. So I've had to learn not only to speak the language they speak, but also to learn to listen, and had to convince people to listen to me and the greater public to empower me and invest in me. I had the good fortune of getting more in the public eye with the show on the Food Network. It was still in the early stages, but it was making its way into many households. And many of my colleagues were able to parlay this into their exposure into multiple restaurant cookbook deals, spokesperson gigs. I was still having some trouble getting people to empower me and invest in me. I asked some of my male chef colleagues, I don't have to mention any names, you know what I'm talking about, how were they able to monetize their newfound popularity? And they were very tight-lipped. I was being denied access to information. Even the Food Network, they requested that I organize a bunch of my soul sister girlfriends sitting around having brunch so they could film us. I was like, oh my God, they want to put me in a box. They didn't even know me. They assumed that all my friends came from the same background. And once they had 2 seasons taped, they showed them over and over again. No residuals for me. But it's true. I'm African American. I now cook soul food, but I still don't fit into a box. I trained in France. I can cook foie gras. I can make salmon carpaccio. I can cook boeuf bourguignon. I can't even pronounce it. I can cook pretty much anything. I can make a carrot foam and lay some freeze-dried onion strips with tweezers on a plate if I wanted to. But I chose to cook Southern and soul food because I thought I could make the most impact by bringing this cuisine to the masses in a way that would be more contemporary, sustainable, and appealing. And also that I could give back to my community and show a really positive light and influence of this cuisine. And it's authentically me. Thank you. It sounds like I followed all the right steps to becoming a successful restaurateur, right? But then I learned how much capital it takes to open a restaurant. No one told me that when I was starting out. And then I'm back to, please empower me, please invest in me. That's a hard road to go down, especially when you don't speak the language of finance. I had meetings with lots of people who had financial success at the time I wanted to open my restaurant. I had been in the field for almost 20 years, but I discovered it wasn't enough. I was denied access to real capital. People would invest $5,000, $10,000, but nothing near what it takes to properly own a restaurant with the right economics of at least 80 seats and location, location, location. So I was denied access to real estate. One landlord who now has had 4 tenants in his space in the 7 years I've been on Mandela Parkway told me that I couldn't play loud music. And he later opened a nightclub in that space. So I don't know what that was about. So I realized at one point that I have to empower myself, I have to invest in myself, and I have to empower others and invest in others. And I've learned that I can learn just as much from the people that work for me as the people that I've worked for. And what I try to instill in others is to be empathetic to those that don't have the same background and opportunities and embrace them and develop a cultural sensitivity that I didn't always experience when I was coming through this business. Unlike other industries, it's not, the degrees that people have accumulated. It's based on a desire to learn, to go farther, and you just want people to have this fire in them to be successful. And in order to sustain that fire, you really need to empower them and invest in them. You may not notice, as graduates, a lot of people coming from the same background, and you think it's normal, all of you are kind of in the same economic group, but I don't want you to forget to empathize with other people that might not have the opportunity to travel beyond their home state that you're going to be working with. They might not understand the perspective of different landscapes and accents and weathers. I mean, people from California, a lot stay in California, and I don't blame them. I love it here. But it's really important to understand diversity. And I don't just talk the talk, I walk the walk. I have a kitchen manager who's African American, a kitchen manager who's Mexican, a floor manager who's Korean. She's worked for me for 7 years. A general manager who's East Indian. My bakery manager is a white woman from Chico. My host is a black gay man, and another one of my best servers is from Paso Robles. I have a guy in the kitchen who's been in the penal system and he needed a second chance, another guy who's Oakland grown, and a second career Japanese woman, and then there's me. And that's the truth. And we all get along for the most part. Thanks. We probably don't like the same music, but we all get along. And just to end, I just want to say, I think what's always been important to me is that women must empower other women. There's room for us all, and often we're disabled in the business world. Just the other day, I attended an event, the local Young Presidents Organization. There was a tiny fraction of women in the room. And this is the Bay Area, so we still have a ways to go. Some of the ways that I've given back by empowering and investing is sitting on boards and supporting nonprofits that support women, such as, unfortunately, the now defunct Women's Initiative for Self-Employment. Their mission was to train women to be entrepreneurs who had high potential and low income. women who were heads of households, and they became self-sustainable through training them how to run their own small businesses, whether it was gardening service, organizing service, or cleaning service. And I actually still work with a lot of those graduates. I also support Girls Inc., an organization devoted to teaching girls how to be strong, bold, and proud of it. Yep. Thanks. And those boards are my grad school. They're my professional development. So I'm empowering myself and investing myself through my involvement in serving others. And I really recommend that you do the same. As a small business owner and entrepreneur, I am the HR department. I am the employee training specialist. So I've had to create my curriculum for my continuing education, and that's what it is. And I empower and invest in the women who work for me, trying to expose them to as many learning opportunities as possible, giving them a chance. For instance, speaking of failure, Brown Sugar, or B-Side Barbecue has closed. We had to close it after 3 years. It was not a sustainable business model, but we turned it around and we're gonna make it the B-Side Baking Company, and I'm gonna give my baker at Brown Sugar Kitchen the opportunity to run her own show. So, coming soon. In closing, I just want to say we have to work together to empower one another, invest in one another. It has a ripple effect. There are a lot of women who are heads of households who come from non-traditional backgrounds, and we need all of them. So empower me, invest in me, and I want to add, diversify my environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm going to say 2 sentences to close this out, but before I say those sentences, could we give our 4 panelists a big hand? I'm just going to guess that many of you shared this with me as I took in all 4 of your stories. I realized that what we asked people to do, all 4 of you, was to open up a bit and share some real things about your lives. And I'm always stricken by the fact that when I was taking your stories in, and it happens every time when somebody really opens up, that I have a couple of things emerge, and it's both respect and affection. They both come out when I map to somebody else's life. So thank you for opening up all 4 of your lives with us. And for you folks, I think a strong message to take away is for everybody in this room to have the courage to create and eventually come up and tell your own leadership story. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to Carmela.